So welcome to this Q&A session for Jean Seberg, actress, activist, icon. We have here Kelly Randall, one of the directors, the writers of the film, together with director Gary McGee, who cannot be here today, and wife, producer, writer Tammy Randall, who is not here today. Kelly, one first question, because Jean Seberg is an icon, she is an activist and a great actress, but why making a movie about her today? What it is to you and to Gary?
Well, I know for Gary early on, when he began learning about Jean Seberg, that he felt there was a lot of misinformation available about her that was just being repeated as fact. So I think one of his objectives was to tell a true story and to try to clear up some of those misconceptions about Jean. I know from our standpoint, Tammy and I, that we feel that Jean's story still feels contemporary. Sadly, we're still, as a society, struggling with some of the same issues that Jean was wrestling with in terms of her activism. So the story is an older story, but when you begin working with history, as we do all the time in our historical documentary film work, you pretty soon discover that that so many of those stories still feel contemporary.
And as a programmer, I could really relate to this story and to this soul. There was like, she just wanted to do good, and then everything went wrong somehow. She seemed like a very beautiful person beside the aura of the diva that she was at the time. So the film is very rich in terms of archive material. You clearly have researched a lot. How did you steer the research? Where did you get the material from? Who helped you?
So I know Gary early on approached the County Historical Society associated with Jean's hometown of Marshalltown. And they had a collection of some items that had been collected over the years by individuals. Jean's family had donated some things to them. And then later, even into the period when we were involved with the project, Jean's sister, Marianne, supplied some things that people wouldn't have seen before. Some personal photographs, family home movies, things like that. The family also had copies of some of Jean's interviews on 16mm film. And so there was a lot of material. There was a woman in town who had kept a scrapbook of all of Jean's clippings. I know also Tammy did a lot of research finding additional clippings that would help us tell Jean's story. So I think one of the big things maybe that we brought to the project was this idea of her hometown of Marshalltown being almost a character in her story, and that perhaps because Gary and Tammy and I are also products of the Midwest, we understood that part of her life and how that was always part of her life.
And how she was really a woman, like a local girl in the end, although a very international figure.
Right, and you mentioned about her being an icon, and I think that is how she's remembered by most people. They look back at that look that she achieved in Breathless, and that's kind of what they think about when they think of Jean Seberg. But there's so much more to her than that. She's beautiful, but she's intelligent, she's creative, and she's somebody's sister, somebody's wife, somebody's daughter, and somebody's friend. And I think other projects that had been done previously focused only on the celebrity aspect. And when we interviewed Elaine Brown, I remember Elaine said, that Jean was fragile. We think about celebrities as being maybe indestructible, but Elaine said Jean was fragile, and she said, and they broke her.
And they broke her, yes, the story is terrible. So obviously, as a European, I got to know Jean through Breathless, and and then seeing her in the amazing story, that in her amazing bio, gives the character such a depth and such a human touch that it was really surprising for me. I mean, it was a great discovery. What obviously you knew Jean before starting the research, before starting the documentary, but the more you researched about her, what is it that really surprised you about the character? What did you think, oh my God, this is really unexpected?
Yeah, we did know of her. We knew of her through, I think when I was 12, I probably saw the film she did with Peter Sellers. And then later we saw Paint Your Wagon and Airport. And so we knew her for those American films primarily. But she was kind of a person who was ahead of her time in some ways. I think if she had been doing the things she was doing 10 years later, she might not have attracted the kind of attention that she did, the negative attraction or attention that she did. Also, we were all impressed with the way that Jean was able to move in a variety of different social circles very easily, seemingly. I know how intimidating that kind of thing is for me, and she just seemed to be really good at that. And Gary, I know, talked about that what moved him about Jean too was the disappointment that she had when people who had been supportive of her and who had embraced her then later disowned her, you know, and that kind of personal rejection.
Wow, like, yes, this character has so much to give in terms of storytelling. And obviously your documentary was preceded by this film by Benedict Andrews with Kirsten Stewart called Seberg. We saw that in London, I mean in the UK, it was distributed. And I was wondering if you watched it and if there is a difference that you remark in the interpretation of the character.
Yeah, we did see it. And I think narrative films, you know, obviously it's a fictional film based on a true story, but a narrative film has a different objective. And I think early on in the film, we saw a scene of Jean getting off an airplane and raising her fist in the air in that public setting. And so right away, that signaled to us that this was a creative telling of Jean's story. Jean was very quiet about her activism. It wasn't out front. It wasn't, maybe we sometimes see celebrities who become activists and they're very, they sort of promote that aspect of themselves. And Jean didn't do that. So I think that film just has a different objective. You know, we're working in the documentary realm and we're very, very much focused on
the truth,
material and accuracy. And their focus was on telling a creative story.
Makes sense.
It wasn't the Jean Seberg that we've come to know, but if it brings people to her true story, that's great.
Yeah, probably they will somehow they have different goals, as you were saying. So they both then feed into the character, the icon in a way. So you worked together with director Gary McGee and with your wife Tammy Randall. How did the three of you get together? Obviously, you and your wife, you have also a production company, but how did the collaboration with Gary started and how did it evolve? How did you three work together?
Yeah, Tammy and I are used to working together all the time, so we have kind of a rhythm and a shorthand, I guess. But when you bring somebody else in, that's a possibility for a challenge.
Yes.
But no, it's been great working with Gary. And I can remember it's been many years ago now, I think probably in 2006 when we got the first phone call from Gary. We had been living by that time in Los Angeles for about 15 years or so. And he was aware of a film that we had produced that was in theaters in the Midwest. And he called and talked about this project he'd been working on for a while. And when I got off the phone, Tammy said, "Well, who was it?" And I told her, and well, what did he want? And I said, "Well, I don't know. I think he was looking maybe for a co-producer." So then a year or so later, we moved back to the Midwest and touched base with Gary again. And then by 2008, we had a plan for working together to use Gary's original interviews, to add some new interviews and some additional visual context, and create this film that he had been working on for so long. So we all have different strengths, and that has been an asset, I think, as we've moved together to complete the film.
Great. And then Tammy wrote part of it.
Right. We worked together on the writing, and you know, I was the editor, and you know, that ends up being part of how the film comes together. Yeah, we collaborated on every aspect of the film, the three of us. So, and you know, I can remember Gary produced a film too, a documentary, and I remember reviewing that and making sure that I understood, you know, what Gary's aesthetic was, what his storytelling technique was. So it's really a product of, for better or for
Three minds, yes.
The three of us.
Yes, great. Yes. And how's the film being received abroad and in the States? Is it being distributed in cinemas, on TV? Where is it going, in festival circuits?
Yeah, we're just right now in the early stages of release of the final version of the film. So this, as you know, is at Raindance will be the international premiere of the film.
Yeah.
We've had the good fortune to be with audiences here in the States, and people are very moved by the film. They connect to the film and to Gene's story. That's one of the more gratifying things as a filmmaker, is to really sit with an audience and see how things are working.
Because it really draws, I mean, I think people can easily relate to the human side of this character, as we were saying before, and this is also why it's so likable. One last question before I let you go. Do you have any other projects that you would like to talk about, or is this the main focus? Promoting this film is the main focus at the moment?
Well, Tammy and I always have about 3 films stages all the time. Gary, I know, is working on several story ideas, and he's got a kind of a mini-series project that's in the works. I can't say too much about that, but last year we released a film called The Amish Incident, Wisconsin versus Yoder. That's a famous U.S. Supreme Court case here in the U.S. Earlier this year, we released a film called Becoming Harriet Beecher Stowe, which is about the Cincinnati, sort of formative Cincinnati years for the abolitionist and the author of Uncle Tom's Cabin. And we're also in production on the latest episode in a documentary series called Hero Street. We have a Mexican-American community here in the Quad Cities, and the small town of Silvis has a 1.5 block long street that has produced more men died in combat than any other street of any size in America. 8 young men, 6 during World War II and 6 during Korea. So that's an exciting, and 2 during Korea. That's an exciting project that we've been working on for a while.
Well, you're keeping busy. So I wish you every luck. I'm really sorry you can't be here with us today and maybe enjoy the screening with the audience. But I mean, you will hear from us and you will hear how it's gone. And I wish you every luck with all of your projects, and hopefully our paths will cross again soon with your future films.
Well, thank you so much. And we're pleased to be in the festival, and we wish everybody a very good festival this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly.